Hi, it's Christine Daigle.
I'm Jena Brown.
This is Kevin Tumlinson.
And I'm JD Barker. Welcome to Writers Inc. So I'm back. We went to, I heard you guys last week. So it's frustrating because I listened to the podcast, but I couldn't chime in. I couldn't fill you in on where. So we went to Sanibel Island, which is right off the coast of Fort Myers down in Florida. And it got hit by Hurricane Ian. It was 2 years ago. And it completely decimated the island. It took out the bridge that went between the mainland and the island. So nobody could even get out there for the longest time. The island is super cool. My wife's family's been going there for 30 years every summer for vacation. But it wiped everything out. Water levels, I think, came up 6 feet over ground level. So anything on a first floor was just gone. So basically all the rental properties got cleaned out, and, without tourists coming in, then all the businesses that are on the island, they all dried up. So when we were there, the condo that we have is on the second floor, which is good, but the one below us had to get completely gutted. And there was just nothing there. There was no tourists. The beach, I don't know if I sent you guys the video. I put one up on Instagram, but it was completely deserted. We were literally the only people on the beach. So yeah, it was very surreal, seeing that place torn up like that. And it's going to take a while, I think, for it to get back to normal, because, they've got to rebuild all of it, and then people have to start coming back.
Yeah.
Good to get away. But we were just talking before the break, when I go on vacation, it feels like I need a vacation from the vacation, because the work just keeps piling up, and the emails keep coming in, and it's stressful for me to not deal with it. You all know, when you send me an email, I tend to reply almost right away. I'm usually right in front of that stuff. So for me not to do that is stressful. So I'm still trying to dig out of that hole, but I feel
I got no problem with not responding to the emails. That's not a problem.
I can't do it. I'm an inbox zero guy. So when I see 100 emails piled up in there, it drives me insane.
Yeah, the email gets overwhelming and out of hand real quick. But I've got a hard and fast rule that I don't even check email until later in the day, because it'll derail. I will just make a career out of answering email if I don't stick to the rules. So
how do you not check email though?
I don't turn it on. I don't open it, and I have alerts turned off. So
yeah, so that's where I mess up, because I get the notification on my phone. Then I've got an Apple Watch, so the headline for the email always pops up on my Apple Watch. So I can't. I guess I'd have to just turn all that off.
Yeah, I turned all that off long time ago, because that'll rule your life, man. I mean, as you know, but
yeah.
If you're trying for the whole inbox zero thing at all times, I mean, that's your thing, but I can't do that. It'll take me over, and it has. So, sorry, Jenna, go ahead.
I was just happy that I have finally managed to keep my emails under 10,000 for quite some time. Lately, even under 5,000. So now I'm just going to aim for less than 2,000 is going to be my goal. So that's where I'm at, in case anyone's curious.
Well, my inbox is at 500, and I probably will never answer some of them. They just get lost in the abyss. Yeah, August has been vacation month for me, so I've been gone 17 days this month, and I'm starting to get hives because I'm so behind on everything I need to do.
I'm pretty lucky, because Kara tends to, especially when we're on vacation, she tends to sleep a lot later than me. So I generally get a few hours in the morning and I get up early. I mean, I'm an early riser, so I end up being able to get some writing done and do some other things before the vacationing starts. So
yeah. But the worst thing though is that we didn't have you last week to tell us where we went wrong. I'm sure we went very, very wrong on what is the difference when you're an imprint or a distributee of one of the big five, or is there one? Are they what? Tell us, JD.
So I listened to the podcast, and I'm yelling at my phone because I can't respond to you guys. I mean, you were all pretty close. I mean, to take what I've got going on with Simon & Schuster as an example. So Simon & Schuster is a publisher in their own right, but then they've got imprints under the publishing umbrella. They own some of those imprints, and then other ones are independent imprints. So in my case, I would be considered an independent imprint with Hampton Creek Press. And I've got a deal with Simon & Schuster. So I basically use them as my backbone. They handle all of my print distribution, and their salespeople basically take my titles out to the bookstores and handle it from the marketing side. So like when a Simon & Schuster rep walks into a bookstore, my books are right there next to the Simon & Schuster titles and the other imprint titles. So I guess that's the easiest way to look at it. It's gotten very convoluted over the years with, everybody merging. Because like Penguin Random House is buying up everybody, and like they don't necessarily want to get rid of those imprints that they buy, so they just kind of merge them in, try to get rid of some of the redundancy, but they tend to keep most of those. I honestly, I really think they just need to do away with a lot of them. Like this doesn't make sense if they're under the same umbrella to have all these different imprints, as Penguin Random House or as HarperCollins or as because there's very few imprints I think that people actually look at like that imprint name and buy a book based on that.
Yeah.
The last, Harlequin was a good example of that. People would buy Harlequin, like they didn't know who was actually publishing it. Now it's owned by HarperCollins, but like Harlequin was sold based on that. But that's kind of it. And Tor, I think, has a kind of a unique brand to it.
Yeah.
They probably attract some people, but I think in the most part, book buyers don't necessarily care.
Yeah, I don't think that's kind of an old running gag. Is that nobody buys a book because it has the publisher's name. Like, oh, Random House. Can't wait to read the latest Random House.
Yeah, I used to be a
Nobody
Tor
does
kid.
that.
You're a gigantic nerd like me.
I used to buy the
and
Tors.
You
I'm like,
always
oh.
read the acknowledgments, and then you like start to learn which imprints publish the things that you like based on who's editing the book, and that really excites you. Then you care a little bit.
Yeah.
I think
That's true.
There's definitely a lot of that, but I think a lot of those teams are kind of coming apart because it just doesn't make sense to have the redundancy. So they're letting they buy the imprint, they let a lot of the editors go and a lot of the staff, which is sad because then it all becomes one thing too, instead of all those unique voices basically go away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, imprints. So what was the deal with the first look thing?
Oh, so a first look, you were pretty close on that too. So I'm trying to think of an example I could give you. So James Patterson's got a first look deal with Skydance right now. So pretty much any book that he puts out, he has to show it to them first. And that's all that means. They basically get the first look at it, the first crack at it. And typically they get a certain amount of time where they have to either say yes or no. That could be as short as a week, 30 days. It could be a year, it depends on your contract. And then once that happens, if they pass on it, then you can shop it to the other players.
Yeah.
It's a catch-22 thing. I actually talked to my agent about a first look deal today, trying to decide if that's something I want to do. Because with all these co-author titles, the nice part about it is, you've got somebody you can talk to with every single product and say, here's another one, here's another one, here's another one. You're not just, going out randomly like you do, without that. The problem is it eliminates some of the financial gain that you can have on the other side. Yeah. We've got this Flatliners project going on right now. There's a lot of studios that are weighing in. They all want a piece of it. So that's probably going to go to auction. And it's only going to go to auction because I don't have a first look deal. There's nobody that can raise their hand and say, hey, we're taking this off the table. So I guess it's a catch-22. You have to look at your particular situation and decide whether you want to do that. But a lot of authors are starting to do it. A lot of imprints are starting to do it, and it kind of streamlines the back end, the business side of things, because they've got a funnel they can put those books through to possibly get them to the screen faster.
Could you exclude certain types of, like your co-authored books or something like that from the deal?
You can, but you have to be a little tricky about it. So like in my case, if I were to sign a first look deal, I would sign the first look deal between Hampton Creek Press, my imprint, and the studio. Which means that if I, as an author, put a book out, that book isn't necessarily a Hampton Creek Press book anymore. It's a J.D. Barker book. So that means that I could shop it as J.D. Barker, or my agent could. But if it were released as Hampton Creek Press, then that first look deal would be in effect. So you can kind of work your way around those sort of things.
Interesting stuff.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I figured it was like. So I'm glad we were
Yeah, you were
close.
pretty close. And you had mentioned like they can tie up the books. That can happen, based on a first look deal. But in my experience, most of the time it doesn't. Like they'll run it. Like if you tell them, we've got interest from somebody else, but you have a first look deal, we have to show it to you first. They'll usually weigh in on whether or not they want it pretty quick, because everybody's trying to, nobody's trying to hurt each other. They're all trying to work together. So
Yeah,
I've never seen somebody tie up a book, with a first look deal before.
very good. That's good.
All right. What is in the news?
Well, first up, Len Riggio dies at 83. The man who built Barnes & Noble into a book-selling powerhouse, Len Riggio, died at 83 following a battle with Alzheimer's disease. In addition to building and running Barnes & Noble, Riggio also founded Barnes & Noble College Booksellers, MBS Textbook Exchange, and GameStop. Riggio started in the book-selling business while studying at NYU with his first business, the Student Book Exchange. He later dropped out of NYU. Riggio bought the original Barnes & Noble store on Fifth Avenue in 1971 with a $1.2 million loan. A few years later, that same Fifth Avenue store became the world's largest bookstore, stocking more than 150,000 titles. Barnes & Noble, under Riggio's leadership, was the first major retailer to be open on Sundays and to have public restrooms, something for which I have always been grateful.
I didn't know that he also did GameStop. That's
Yeah, I didn't know that either.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. And it makes me wonder who's the original Barnes and who's the original Noble.
Yeah.
This guy
Interesting
started the
name.
chain.
Yeah, I got to find that out now. Unless they were just marketing, constructions.
That's very possible. A bunch of people sitting in a room going, what particular names, play the best with an audience. This guy was obviously a visionary, and it was really cool to GameStop alone, like that, that got huge for a while there. And the funny thing is, like today in the stock world, like I don't know if you follow that, it's still a big player on the stock side, even though I don't think many people go to the actual GameStop stores anymore.
There's a whole movie about GameStop stock.
There is.
Yeah.
And it's a fascinating watch because it can kind of clue you in as to how the stock market can be manipulated just by noise. You make enough noise on a particular stock and it can run. That can also land you in jail. But the movie is awesome.
Yeah. Well, next up, never get stranded without a novel again with this map of 6,000 bookstores. One person has curated a searchable, scrollable, and sortable map and database of 6,001, for some reason, non-chain bookstores. The project is a 3-year labor of love. The map features stores that focus on book selling, have a brick-and-mortar shop, and have fewer than 20 locations. The map also features a lot of handy resources as well, compiling links to various booksellers, associations, fairs, auctions, news sites, and more. We have a link we should somehow try to include in any show notes to iheartbookstores.com, which is kind of that's nice.
Yeah.
So is it an app or just a website?
It's just a website, and you can go and poke around at all the bookstores. Like it's a clickable map, so you can see where they are. You can click on the bookstore. You can get info on it. I was playing around with it the other day. It's pretty cool. As an author, if you're looking for some indie stores,
I've got this really cool thing on my phone. I've got this really cool thing on my phone called GPS, where I can just type in bookstore and it'll tell me like what bookstores are around me.
Though, here's my caveat to that, because like I live in the Austin area and I want to find, and I'm new to the Austin area. So I want to find like local indie bookshops. And when I search for bookstore, I get all the Barnes and Nobles and, I get a bunch of stuff that doesn't really fit what I'm looking for. And there's no way to really narrow that down. I can Google it, but then, that's kind of hit or miss.
Yeah,
So.
I agree. I think like the GPS, if there's not a lot of like major bookstores, it would work. But yeah, if you live in a place that's just got like those major players, you have to like scroll in, like the closer you scroll in on your maps, the more detailed it gets, but like your overview may not be quite as good for those smaller stores that are sometimes more interesting to go visit.
Yeah. Get a lot of half price books around here. That's the major player here. Like I can think of at least 10 of them within a 30-minute drive of my house. So
Interesting.
I love half-price books. Now,
Yeah,
Christine's on vacation. Let me ask you, Christine, if you do this. So, like, whenever I go somewhere, I always have my assistant reach out to the bookstores in that area, like a week or two in advance, to tell them that I'm going to be there, to give them a chance to order some books. And if they get some, then I go in and sign them, and I can put it up on social media and stuff. Like, have you ever tried that?
So yeah, Christine, do you get your assistant to call ahead and find bookstores for you?
No.
Not necessarily your assistant. I'm just thinking from like a general, because here's why I do that. Like I've I think we all walk into bookstores and look for our own titles. I think everybody does that as an author. But bookstores, they can move titles that are signed by the authors much faster and much easier than one that's just on the shelf. So like they're very into it too. But if you don't make that call, or if you just show up and then ask like on site, chances are they're not going to be able to get stock in there fast enough. So I found that if I do it in advance, some of them even set up talks, but they'll order 10, 20 books or whatever and have them sitting there, which is just it's fun because you walk in, you actually get to sign them, create a little hype about it. So I could see a database like this being useful for that, because it's always been a pain in the butt for me to search for a bookstore that's not in the physical location where I am.
Yeah. That's kind of what I was like, that would be interesting for that. I've never thought about that. I always visit the bookstores everywhere I go. So yeah, that's why JD is smart.
Well, that's why I'm bringing it up, because I know a lot of authors, and like they all, like I was doing that for the longest time too. I would walk into the bookstore, while on vacation, and then try to figure it out, or like at the airport or whatever. And I know airport bookstores are very difficult to get into, but like a lot of these stores, if you notify them in advance that you're going to be coming in, just give them a week, they can get titles there for you.
Pro tip. Next year when I'm coming back, I'll let them know.
Next time.
Yeah.
See, I just go in and I just sign any of my books that I find. And if I don't find any, I sign someone else's books.
Don't do that.
That is how you get arrested.
Have you heard, or have you seen on social media though, where authors get like, I don't know, chastised by like staff members don't know that they're the author of the book, and they're like, you can't just sign books. And they're like, I literally wrote it.
I've been ID'd before. Like at the store, like, can I see your ID?
Yeah.
I've had that happen.
That's fun.
What happens if it's a pen name? Well, I can show you my ID, but it doesn't make any difference because it's my pen name is JD Barker. Trust me on this.
Maybe Google.
Yeah.
Google. Maybe they jump on Google.
That's an AI generated photo. Can't go by that. All right. Final story. More Jack Ryan. Yes, please. Publishers Marketplace announced a major deal this week for 6 new books in the Tom Clancy Jack Ryan universe. A major deal in Publishers Marketplace lingo means more than $500,000, by the way. The books were sold to Putnam and imprint on Penguin Random House on behalf of Clancy Media. Is there still a big question mark and controversy over who owns all the early Tom Clancy books? There was a whole thing about that.
I don't know if it's about the books. I know that the estate, there was some, how did this play out now? They weren't able to determine who actually owned Jack Ryan, the character, if I remember correctly. Like the estate thought that they owned it because they thought Tom Clancy owned it, but in a very early contract that he signed for film or TV, he gave up those rights to a studio. And I know they were in court over that, and I don't know if it ever got finalized.
Well, and if I remember right, it got even more complicated because I believe, and I don't remember which branch of the military or government owns some of the rights to that character. I believe that.
Really?
Yeah. So, because I think he was in the Navy or something. Man, this is so long ago that I'm going to just butcher this whole thing. So go Google this to fact check everything I'm saying. But I remember the story being that when he originally started writing, because he had to get permission for everything, because once you've served, in a certain level of military or government, you have to get permission to write and publish anything. And so, but as part of that deal, someone owned part of it, and then he started a little publishing imprint, and then that owned part of it, and then he and his ex-wife, when they split up, she got part of it. I mean, from what I remember, it's actually split across 4 or 5 different channels. I'm sure it's been sorted by now because they've got TV shows and everything else. So,
I'm sure that was like very stressful and a pain and like a lot of legality, but to write a character that everyone wants to claim ownership to.
Yeah.
Like that's quite an accomplishment.
Yeah.
Oh,
I could live with that. All right. Well,
Military
yeah. Just
wanting
that's
your
all the news I can come up with off the top of my head today,
Yeah.
guys.
just think about all your stuff up front, right? Get your contracts in a row.
Yeah.
If you don't know what to do,
Oh yeah,
someone
yeah.
who
Get
does.
That's a good that would make a great topic. We should find somebody who is an expert in that kind of thing for this show because
Yeah.
I have questions, and because when I die, I want my wife to be able to continue to benefit from the books and characters that I created, but I don't quite know how to make sure that happens. So
Yeah.
I'm sure JD knows.
Probably next time.
I'm going through the list of lawyers that I have on my mental Rolodex, and that's probably where we need to go. I'll ask and see if anybody's willing to come on and talk about it.
Nice.
Because it does get extremely convoluted.
Yeah.
Ownership, even when you're alive. Like, one of the things that I've talked to other authors about is, the titles really should be registered, or the copyright should be registered in a trust instead of under the author name, because as long as that trust is in existence, the copyright won't expire. And that actually came from VC Andrews. If you follow VC Andrews at all, she's been putting out books for years, long after she died, and it's all owned by a trust. And as far as I know, never going to go out of copyright just because of that. But we need a good lawyer on the air to talk about all this stuff for sure. There's a lot of little loopholes involved.
Yep, absolutely. All right, great.
Agreed.
Okay, JD, who is up this week?
This week we've got Ann Garvin coming on. She's a nurse, professor, and USA Today bestseller. Her latest novel is called Bummer Camp. It's about two sisters who scramble to save their family's legacy, and it's set to release on September 1st. Here she is, Ann Garvin.
So you have a new book out, Bummer Camp, which we're going to talk about in a little bit.
I do, yes.
But I want to start at the beginning. Tell me, you can answer however you want. How did you get started in writing and publishing?
Oh, I really took the long way around. Of course, I've always been a reader, but I haven't always been a writer. But I just, the Wisconsin Book Festival had this big, writing contest. They haven't had one since, so it must have been a nightmare to do. And I was a writer at the time. I mean, except I wrote a lot of science and I wrote letters. But I didn't, I had never written any fiction, but I thought the contest looked kind of fun and it was $10. And so they sent you a piece of art and you had to write a story in 24 hours and you had to get it back to them right away. It couldn't be more than 2,000 words. And it was clearly nothing that you'd done before because it had to be, everybody got the same art piece. And I guess there were hundreds of people that did it. And so I thought, oh, well, it's, I did this. That was kind of fun to do. I'll look into writing someday. And then I went to a wedding and in San Francisco. And then they called and said, many weeks or months later, they called and said, you won second place. And I feel like it was one of the happiest moments of my life. And I say that even knowing that having children was happy, but that hurt. And this did not hurt. Did not hurt at all. And I was so shocked by it. It was such a clear blue sky thing that I thought, and then they gave the professors who did the judging, they gave their feedback. Mm-hmm. And I was like, this is the most amazing experience of my life. I'd love to try this again. And so that's what did it. You know how it is. One person says, you're a good writer, and then you ruin your life by writing. And so I spent the rest of I just decided that I was going to pursue that. I was teaching full time. I was still married at the time. And it just seemed like something kind of fun and exciting to do outside of the regular life stuff. So because I'm not really a person that can do anything halfway, which I think is one of my greatest flaws, I just really dug in and over the years have gotten, learned the business, learned how to write, and continuously learn how write, even after having all these books out. All these books. I'm not like Erin Hildebrand, who has like some incredible number of books, but like for me, all these books. And then, but there's so much to learn. There's so much to learn. And so the more that I figure out how to do it, the more I want to teach it, because like really that's where I came from, kind of teaching and telling stories, and and doing research, which is basically storytelling. And I just like, once I figure it out, I just want to tell everybody else how to do it, because it's such a nightmare when you don't know what you're doing and you have so much insecurity about it. So that's really how it happened. And then I did the usual thing. I found an agent, I lost that agent, I found a publisher, I lost that publisher. Like, it just, it's the rocky road of getting there. And now things seem to be a little bit going well for me. But I always feel like you're only as good as your last thing. And so I don't feel like I've learned everything, and I don't feel like I've made it. I don't know. I'm trying also to be a little bit less of more, and be a little bit more of, this is really nice today.
Yeah.
And I'm going to enjoy it, and, not worry too much about the future in terms of writing. But that's it. I mean, in a nutshell.
Yeah.
It's what everybody else does, right? It's
right.
You do your best, you beat back your insecurities, you try really hard to decide to write back to an agent or ask a question, or, and try not to be too obnoxious. And then you just keep going and going and going. And that's really the story, I think, of all writers.
I think so. I think all writers I talk to, those insecurities never really go away. And that rocky road looks a bit different for everybody.
Yeah, except what's his name? Who's the guy? I love that. I think I can't remember his name because I think I'm being a dick about it. But the guy who writes all the romances and has all the movies, what's his name? The Message in a Bottle and all of those.
Oh, yeah.
Nicholas Sparks.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah. I read an early article from him, and it was like, yeah, I wrote a book, submitted it, got 6 agents to say yes. And I was like, immediately, no. Immediately, I don't like you.
Yeah, I think.
And I've never met the man. I'm sure he's very nice.
I think that's an outlier when that happens. So I'm curious, how many books had you written before your first novel was acquired?
Well, you know what? I'm sorry to say, just one.
Well, there you go.
I mean, that was the one. But I will say that I've written 3 books in between things. Bummer Camp was one of those. And then I have 2 others in a drawer that I'm hoping will see the light of day someday after I've rewritten them extensively.
Yeah.
So I sort of came into that afterwards, piling up books in your drawer.
So your first novel, you just cold. How did you find your agent for that? Did you cold query? Did you do something else? Did you pitch in person? You cold query?
Yeah, I did all of it. I mean, I went to New York. I cold queried. I did all of it. I asked for recommendations after I would meet somebody. I did it all like a good Midwesterner with a big smile on my face. And not to bother you, like, can I, that kind of thing. And but I will say that I got rejected 100 times, like probably 100 times. So when it finally came through, I remember I was standing ankle deep in a water park in northern Wisconsin, and I was like getting a call from the guy that you wanted to take you to prom. That's what it felt like. And then I said, when she put me on the phone with an editor who wanted to buy my work at Penguin, I said to her, I will do this for buttons. And my agent was like, no, she won't. She won't do it for buttons. So, I was and am still all of that eagerness and wonder that I can't believe I get to do this amazing thing around all of the other amazing people that I meet. Like, I'm just so grateful for it. And I don't mean it like I'm so grateful. Like, I'm freaking grateful for it. I love it.
Yeah. So you said you've kind of had a road. You've had an agent, lost an agent, had a publisher, got a new publisher. Did you start with Penguin Random House? Was that your first book?
I did. Yeah, my first 2 books. And then And then they dumped me along with Christy Harvey. And I don't know if you know Christy Harvey, but she then later became a New York Times bestseller with, this group of Southern women fiction that are like super duper. And I was like, how do you like her now, Penguin? Not me so much, but her. We both got dumped at the same time at Penguin. And then I went to a small press that was owned by the people who own Writer's Digest, published with them. They were amazing. And then Simon & Schuster bought the whole catalog, the company dumped. I became a Simon & Schuster author, but then they rejected the next book. And so I fired my agent. I wrote 2 books. I taught at Masters of Fine Arts programs. I honed my craft. I tried to figure out what I was doing and what I was doing wrong. I got another agent. I asked for a lady from his group because I thought maybe he wasn't quite my person. I mean, all the things that I don't like to do.
You've done.
All that asking for stuff. Yeah. I did all of that to get the agent that finally left the business, and now I have 2 different ones. So yeah, it's been a rigmarole, and I just don't know how I didn't just roll over at some point. And I'm grateful that I didn't, because this has been so much better now. It's so great. Yeah. And I've had these agents for a while, but I will say the minute I handed in Bummer Camp, my editor went on maternity leave.
No.
Yes. Oh, and that's my second editor at that house.
Oh, so funny.
You just have to go, okay.
Yeah. It just seems like tenacity and being okay, being uncomfortable is the nature of this business.
And patience, right? Like tenacity, being uncomfortable, and patience. Like, we should write that down, because that's really what people need to hear, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And take your meds. I always say you got to take your meds. Yeah, whatever
please.
Meds you're on.
If you haven't taken your meds today, this is your reminder. Take your meds.
Please take your meds. Yeah.
Awesome.
You need to take them.
So now you're with Lake Union, which I am super curious about, because they're an imprint of Amazon, but you can't just send them manuscripts. You have to be agented. How has that experience been for you? Do you like publishing with Lake Union?
Oh my God. I will stay with them until they literally kick me to the curb.
Yeah.
Like when I'm in the nursing home, if they're like, she can't write anymore, I will be like, but please reconsider. So the thing that people probably don't know about Lake Union and all of the traditional arm of Lake Union or Amazon Publishing is that, in my opinion, and I don't know that much about Amazon, so probably I'm not qualified to say this, but they are the gem of Amazon. So I know that Amazon is thought of as, the evil empire in all ways. And even, people say that after receiving 3 packages a day. but Amazon publishing is like what they talk about, publishing used to be. Mm-hmm. Like I have never had that experience of what publishing used to be, but they are definitely, I have never felt more seen than I have ever anywhere than Amazon Publishing. They work very hard to get my books out there. They're so wonderful. If I write to them, they get back to me as soon as they can. If something happens and they don't get back to me, they're full of like apology. It's not, and what do they need to apologize me? Like whatever. Yeah. They are great. They treat me like a true professional. They let me weigh in on all the covers. They let me weigh in on the voice of the audiobook. They're incredible. I've published with several houses now. And
2 big houses, and yeah. Amazon is also a big house, so 3 big houses.
Big house. Yeah, 3 big house. I wonder if they'll ever be considered like part of the big 4 or big 5 or whatever. But I think, they're actually a smaller house compared to some of those, because they have just a smaller number of imprints and smaller number of books they put out. But I can't, it's hard to imagine that they're not considered. But I also think, there's still a lot of hierarchy in the world of publishing. There's still a lot of, like, they're not the Harvard of publishing, Mm-hmm. They're seen as the community college, I imagine, of publishing. Oh. And I think it's going to change, because more and more authors are going in that direction, and more people are seeing that they treat you so well. At least they have for me. Now, I know not everybody has had that great experience, but I can honestly say I have. And I also have, my style is funny and sad, and I don't know how to write anything but funny and sad. Like, I really don't know how to write anything but that. And other places have said, well, maybe you should pick a lane. And I can't. And Amazon is so happy about that. Like, they don't want me to pick a lane. And also, they have not been restrictive in terms of saying, like, okay, your first book with this was a friendship book. They all have to be friendship books or something. Like, I can write in whatever age protagonist, whatever situation. Like, they haven't limited me yet in terms of that.
So you have more freedom with your art, and whatever you want to write, you can write it.
Yeah, but I will say I haven't pushed them. Like, all of a sudden, I haven't tried to write about a fairy or something. Like,
horror. I'm gonna write dark horror now.
Yeah, they'd be like, what?
What?
The next book does have a thriller component, and so they I think are gonna go for it. So, but again, I think that my voice is so strong, and I don't mean that as a self-congratulation. I just mean I know that I have a very strong voice. I can't really be like Meryl Streep, who melts into her characters. I'm much more like Julia Roberts, who you always know it's Julia Roberts. And so I think that that voice carries through everything that I write, and they like that voice. And so if I tried to write in a different voice, they'd be like, sorry, maybe,
Yeah.
But so I just feel like I found a really great home there, and I can't say enough good things about them.
That's amazing. Yeah, I saw your book popped up in my feed from Amazon as one of their first reads.
Yeah.
And you were coming on, and I'm like, what a coincidence. And I'm like, it just makes sense that if you're publishing with Amazon, that you probably get more visibility and in that algorithm. I mean, because it would make sense for them to want their buyers to buy their books, right? How does that first reads work? Like, I would love to hear more about that.
Once a month, they pick the titles that they're going to give a first reads to. I don't know how they pick that. And I'm just so grateful that the last 3 books have been first reads. I feel like every moment I'm waiting for them to say, you're not going to get one. And I would be like, that's fair, because you've given me so many. So they pick one, they pay you for it. They actually pay you money because they know that to build buzz, they need to get the book in front of as many people. And so they give it away for free. And so the nice thing about that is that everybody sees it, gets it in their box, right? And then, anybody that clicks on it, they know who they are. And so your next book comes out and they send that to you, know? So they have all the bells and whistles that help that kind of continuity. And then after a month, then the paperback comes out. And, I think they just sort of watch it happen. Now, I don't see what happens in the back end of that. Like, I don't see how many people have clicked. Because Erin Hildebrand had a short story come out at the same time as my book came out, and I thought, oh, I'm screwed. But it still seems to have done just fine, even given the competition with her, which there is no competition. Of course, she wins. But it's funny. It's sort of like someone says, and here's your magic wand, but we're not going to tell you anything. And that's fine.
It's just amazing. Like, as I'm like, they know who those people are and they target them. And that is gold as an author, to be able to have those emails from sales. Like, we can't see that, right? As anywhere else. So that's amazing.
No, I am so grateful for that because, I created the Tall Poppy Writers to help everybody do their thing. We're just a marketing collaborative of everybody helping each other. Everybody is supposed to not feel jealous, which of course everybody does a little bit, but they help each other find readers. That's what our job is. And I created that, right after my first book when I saw I'm never going to sell another book. And so the hustle behind the marketing, I'm sure can be incredibly exhausting. And, I hate to even say this because I don't like to admit to my age, but I'm older now and I have less energy for social media and all the rest of it. And so I just to have them doing the heavy lifting means that I can write an article for the New York Times, write another book, write an essay somewhere and do it and work on the things that I'm best at.
Yeah.
And without feeling like I'm never going to sell another book and having that incredible panic. And the people that do the greatest job are the ones that understand Facebook ads and marketing with Amazon and algorithms. And I mean, that really, it's just kills me. Like I think about it and I think I'm just gonna nap. I'm just gonna
Absolutely. I think most of us feel that way. I mean, it's necessary, but most of us don't want to really do it. So
no, there's a few people that like to solve the puzzle. I think it's all the authors that maybe like Wordle, but I think that it's not me. Like it's just I can't do that anymore. And so in fact, when my agent, when I was without a publisher and I just got that last agent who then finally left the business. But before I said to her, I only want you to go to Amazon first. Like I want you to go to them first. I sort of thought that maybe they were interested in me because I saw them sign up for my newsletter and I knew that they had some copies and I was just like, if there's any way I can get in there, that's what I want to do. And so we didn't go anywhere else. We just went straight to them. They bought it. And I was like, thank God. I just get tired.
Amazing.
Like as everybody does,
As everybody does. So you mentioned your tall poppy writers. Tell us a little bit about that. What is that about?
Well, so when I really realized like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to sell another book, I thought, why are not authors getting together like rock bands do?
Yeah.
Like, why isn't there an opening band for an author? Like, and I still wonder, like, I'm sure Ann Patchett does it, but Ann Patchett should reach beyond the famous people and pull some unknown person out of the weeds and haul them up. Like, I think it's their responsibility. I certainly do that. And no offense, Ann Patchett, like I'm sure she's not going to care what I say, but and she probably says, I do, shut up. But and so I thought, well, we got to have some kind of way of doing that. And so I created this group of people. Sometimes it's 50. It was up to like 56. Now it's down to like 36 or something because it's about all I can manage. And we just work on launch days to do stuff. We have a little feed where people can talk to each other, get recommendations. When somebody loses an agent, we get kind of some, recommendations that way. So we work really hard to help each other. We've been around since 2012. We've won some awards. We've made some lists. We're really happy. But it's a lot of work. Like it's not, I have Stephanie Burns, who is also just got an agent and a book deal. And so she is going to be an author soon, but she was a book blogger who had on Instagram, who had the cutest dog ever. And we got to be really good friends. And she is my COO now. And if it weren't for her, I would fold the poppies. I wouldn't be able to do it.
Yeah.
So even though it shouldn't be that much work, it's still a lot of work because you're still kind of keeping track of people and trying to get people to get together. We have this every yearly, we have a meeting called PoppyCon and we try to get together and bond and stuff. Yeah. And so it's great. But when you think about it, like that should be enough should be enough to, hit the dial, but it doesn't, it doesn't. It's great for support. It's certainly better than not having it. It really keeps you close to the microphone and I love that, but it doesn't, it's not answering all the.
No. Yeah. But it's great to have a support group. Everyone should support and uplift other writers.
Should.
Make your own group.
Everybody has to. Yeah. And it's a zero-sum game. I'm not competing with you. You are not competing with me. And there isn't just one place at the top. It changes every hour, every day, every sale.
Readers don't read just one author. There's room for everyone on the shelves.
And they don't read one genre.
Right.
Like there's no need I can understand jealousy. I can. And like, if there's a dick author, then don't help them. But if they're, nice people just trying to do what you're doing, then give them a hand if you can, if you have time to do it. And it always comes back one way or another.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I love the tall poppies. They're terrific. I think we changed the milieu. I think we changed the culture. Because right afterwards, lots of sort of groups came up, but then a lot of them fell away. It's very difficult to manage a group.
Right. Yeah.
Especially a diverse group with lots of different genres and lots of different sensibilities. We wanted that for the reasons that you just said. And I love it. And I know that I'm always like saying, but a lot of work. And the reason I say that is that I don't want anyone looking at me and going, well, she had it easy, or like, well, it just happened for her, or and not because of me, but because of them. I don't want them to feel bad about themselves based on a story they're telling about me to themselves. And I don't care what they think about me. It doesn't matter to me. But what they think about themselves matters a lot to me if I'm going to be the thing that they are putting on a pedestal.
Yeah.
Because they shouldn't.
No. But someone has to organize and be a leader, right? That's just the nature of these things.
It is. Yeah, it is. Somebody has to do it,
Yeah.
and I'm certainly not graceful at it. And if it weren't for Stephanie, we wouldn't have done it well. So,
All right. Well, that's
yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about your new book, Bummer Camp. It's about a summer camp for anxious adults run by anxious adults.
It is. That's exactly what it is. You said it perfectly. That's exactly what it is. It's a summer camp for anxious adults run by anxious adults. Yeah.
Such a fun read. And you can't help but see the Wizard of Oz inspiration.
Yeah.
What inspired you to use that in this summer camp setting?
Oh gosh. You know what's funny is that while I was writing the first draft of it, I was thinking, what would they wear? Like, if they have to do this gala, what are they going to wear? And then I had written it that it was a theater camp, and I thought, oh my God, wouldn't it be funny if they all wore two small Wizard of Oz costumes? Because that just seemed so ridiculous. So then after that, like I wrote it and it was just like Panic at the Disco. Like it was so wild. But then I realized like, oh, once I put the costumes on the people, I realized that the arc of those people were the same as the arc as the Wizard of Oz. And so I don't think I had that in my mind as I was writing it. I did, of course, hone it to make it that way so that was obvious later. But as I started to write it, I was like, oh, yeah. And those people are very universal in so much as the ones that don't think they're smart enough or courageous enough, or they don't know quite where home is. And so I thought, well, so then I just leaned into the idea. Like I had a little germ of that would be funny. And then I leaned into the idea of, maybe this whole thing is sort of a retelling of the Wizard of Oz. Maybe it's another way of thinking about it in terms of the character arc that I was working on with Kat.
Yeah.
So that made it really funny. But I will say that no one has said, I don't read my reviews. I'm trying harder, but I tell Stephanie, like, could you just take a look sometimes and see what people are saying? And she'll like, it's all good so far, except for that one really mean one. And then I'll say, is anybody saying anything like, this is so weird, it's too crazy, I can't. And she was like, not so far. So I was a little worried about that. I thought people would be like, this is crazy. But I like to write about closed groups where you make your own rules within that group. It's a little like world building, because once you set up that everything is a little bit strange, like a theater camp, where all the people are theatery, because I did some theater years ago. There were definitely a group. And then you put everything in place, then I feel like all of those wild choices fit into that world. And there is less like, okay, that's a lunatic choice,
Yeah.
So far, people seem to be on board with it and are okay with the strangeness of this thing.
I always think like you should write the thing that scares you. So I think if you think it's wild and you're a little bit scared, it's probably going to be great.
You're right. You're absolutely right about that. And the next one is terrifying as well. And because you're just so worried that you can't pull it off. And I don't know about you, but I don't know if it felt like this, but there was a lot of stuff going on in Bummer Camp. Like,
yeah,
so much, so much running around that I was like, it was a little bit like I was driving in a car with two wheels and I just wasn't sure if those two wheels were going to come down at the end.
I was just impressed by your ability to keep track of the dog. Because I'm like, when you put a pet in there, it's so hard to keep track of them. And I'm like, oh, you thought about the dog. I was so impressed.
I did. I had a Post-it note on my screen that said, don't forget Lefty. Like, don't forget him. And the other thing too, when I was thinking about it was, I should tell you that. So the chapter where, I don't want to give too much away, but in the chapter after, let me think about this. The chapter where Bob is sort of telling his thing. They're
Yeah.
outside.
Yeah.
I think that took me 2 solid weeks to write. But what I mean by that is rewrite. Like I probably handed that in as almost finished. And then in the last edit, I bet it took me 2 weeks to get that right. So that I wasn't overtelling, so that it all made sense, that I had his sort of independability throughout. Like he didn't all of a sudden become this sage and he was, still connected to the odd guy in the beginning. And I'd say that out loud because, when people see a finished work, they think, oh, that must have just, and
Right.
it was not like that. Like I started this book in 2016. I wrote it full through multiple times, so many times that I can't even tell which ones are the recent ones. And then when I pitched it a year ago, then I rewrote it and was able to do it right. But it was not, I had been talking about Bummer Camp with my students and other people for so long. People were finally like, oh, Christ, this is the book. Yeah. This is that one you talked about forever. Yeah.
But I think that's a skill too, to know when the book isn't quite right and maybe to put it away. And maybe you need to develop a little bit more as a writer until you can tackle this wild thing in your imagination.
Yeah, I really did need to become a better writer.
Yeah.
And I had to, one of the things that I teach a lot is characterization and plot so that they're the same thing, And
Well,
I
wholeheartedly agree with that. Plot is character, character is plot.
There's absolutely,
yes.
It's like trying to have a human without a head. Like,
yeah. Yeah. And people say that they're like, which one's more important, plot or character? I'm like, plot is character and character is action through decision. And that's your plot. Like that's
it
it.
makes me want to read everything read everything you've written because that's how it's right. Like, and I think sometimes people that don't teach it well, maybe do it if they're authors and they do it they just do it and they're just good at it, because they'll say, well, just follow your character. And I think, I mean, what? Like my character would do what I do, which is wander off. Like, so I wrote a book before I thought you said this would work. And it's a very funny story, and I don't know how much time we have, but I wrote it, handed it in, edited it with an editor for a while, thought, this is terrible. Bob Saget died. For some reason, that made a big impression on me. And I called my agent. I was like, Bob Saget died. I'm not going to die writing this book. And she was like, do you know Bob? And I was like, no, but this book is not, I'm going to pull it.
Yeah.
And so, and my editor at Lake Union was like, yeah, okay. I mean, yeah. And so then I pitched, There's No Coming Back from This. And I wrote that one and they were great about it, but that's still in a drawer. I don't know what I'm going to do with that one. There's probably a lot of good jokes in it, but I haven't touched it. So, but again, I knew. And so after that happened, I thought this is never going to happen again. And I created a teaching thing on how to plot with character and how to do it so that I never do that again.
Yeah.
Because I wrote forward from the premise.
Yeah.
And if you write forward from the premise, eventually you're just going to peter out and you're like 20, 50 pages in, you'll be like, I don't know what's happening.
Yeah.
And that's what I did with that book.
Yeah.
I thought I was able, but I couldn't. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's good to hear. Yeah.
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 So I think, and I think if you tell people that it's hard and a struggle and you pull things back, then maybe they will write a better book too.
Yep.
They won't be complacent because they think they should be able to do it.
Yeah, I think all this mythology of like I wrote a book and someone picked it up right away and I was an overnight success, it never works that way. Almost never. I'm sure there's an outlier out there, but it's not the truth for most of us. I know that it's good PR, like it's good, but it's not the truth, we'll be honest.
The minute I hear that, I think you're lying.
Yeah.
You're lying. Even the guy that wrote Remains of the Day, he said he wrote Remains of the Day in his house in 2 weeks, and his wife would drop off food, and I was like, I can type a book in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So I was like,
I think you can. I'm not sure that it would be publishable, but everyone has different abilities, so I'm not going to rule that out. So.
Right. And also, I think maybe part of the story is I wrote it in 2 weeks, handed it to my editor, and then I edited it for a year or something.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And so I think that that's the piece of it that sometimes we don't hear because the other headline is better.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, it's been delightful talking to you. We are running out of time.
Yes, I thought we might be.
Yeah, just as a wrap up, if you had anything that you would offer to new writers or to writers in their career, a piece of advice that you have heard from someone else or that you've learned, I'd love to hear what that would be.
I think so. I'll just say really quickly, I think some people need get in there and get it done, and some people need a little bit more gentle, and you need to figure out who that is and give yourself that.
Yeah.
Because I think, one thing does not fit all. And it can really harm an author if they're like, I'm supposed to be writing every day. Mm-hmm. And then somebody else is like, I never leave my desk. Like it's just a burnout situation and a misery situation either way. So I would say, you got to give yourself what you need. You have to know whether you're the kind of person that needs a deadline or a motivation, or you're the kind of person that needs to take a nap, and give yourself that gentleness. I always say this. Okay, I'll say this. That if you have a beloved child or dog or cat or mother or father or whatever, don't talk to yourself in a different way than you talk to them. So I would never kick my dog, say, wake up and do sit-ups. I would never be like, you're such a lazy dick. I wouldn't. I'd be like, you must be tired. You're sleeping.
Yeah.
And so I try really hard to talk to myself like I talk to my beloved dog or my children. And then I just find there's more compassion there.
All right. So tenacity, being uncomfortable, and patience is the nature of this business. Do you think that's true?
Yes.
Or what would you add?
Yes.
Yes.
Especially that being uncomfortable part.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think every author goes through this, right? I mean, it never ends. Every book that you put out, you're either shopping it to, and if you're lucky to keep the same agent through your whole career, they're taking it out to various publishers. If you get dropped by your publisher, you're looking for another one. It's this never ending cycle. And then there's that self-doubt that's always creeping into everybody. And it seems like every author has it. Doesn't matter how big you are. They all have that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So self-doubt.
I definitely do.
Self-doubt.
Yeah.
Self-doubt.
So I've always been curious about Lake Union and Amazon publishing, because that's not something we talk about a lot. There's the big five and there's also Amazon. And I was just really interested to hear Ann's perspective on that. She said, it's like publishing used to be. And she was with two of the other big houses. She said, I get more input. They're more flexible. What do you think about that? What do you think the advantages would be of publishing with Amazon? Is that something you would do?
I know Dean Koontz pretty well, and we talked to him about this, and I think he actually we interviewed him on the show a couple years back, and I think he might have went into it on the show too. But he's obviously a household name. Has been around forever. He's been through all the big publishers and seen them come and go. He signed an Amazon deal, I'm guessing it was probably 10 years ago now, 5-10 years ago. But he's been on the Thomas and Mercer imprint. And when that first happened, he told me that they did more to promote the first book that he had with Thomas and Mercer than he had seen with like the last 20 books that he had with, I think it was Random House. And he also mentioned that the things that they did were, very fresh and new and, like outside of the box thinking versus the bigger, traditional publishers that just kind of stuck with the same techniques they've been using year after year after year. So if you look on Amazon, like a Kuntz book, like they throw it all over the place. It's always in your face. And obviously he's a different category, I think, than some of these other people. But you can see what they're doing. Now the flip side of that though is every book that he has sold on Amazon, regardless of how many top copies he's actually unloaded, none of them have appeared on the New York Times list. He's clearly selling more than enough to get there. But it's basically, he's been ignored by that list. And I don't know about the other ones. That's the only one that we've actually talked about. But it did open some doors too. I think he was the first big author on an Amazon imprint to actually have physical books in bookstores. Like Barnes and Noble refused to carry Amazon books for the longest time. And when it came to Kuntz, they didn't have a choice. Like he kind of forced that door open. And I think that opened it for other authors to follow. So all good stuff.
Yeah, I would have to think that Amazon, as much as we may or may not like it, Amazon, a lot of people buy their books there. And I would think that they would probably give their own authors more visibility, and just being able to target readers with that email over and over again. We know as authors, that's gold, to like know who your reader is and be able to target them.
Yeah.
Is so worthwhile. So I thought that was really interesting.
Well, they've got control over all of it, right? They've got the algorithms. They can see exactly who's looking at what, who's buying what, and no other publisher can claim that. And I mean, if you look at any of the top lists on Amazon, the top 5-10 always tend to be Amazon imprint titles. Before they start getting into the other ones, that's not an accident.
Yeah. I might trade a bestseller list for that. I'm telling you.
I would. Yeah. I mean, I have to say, I think I would do, like, if I could get like the Thomas and Mercer, deal, I would probably do it. Even if it did limit my chances of getting on the New York Times list or something. Because I think that in terms of meeting my goal of one day owning my own castle, I think I stand a better chance rolling the dice with Amazon. But
I think it requires just a rethinking of your business model, because you mentioned, I think it was the first look email that they do, or what do they call it, first reads email.
Yeah.
They'll put their titles in that, which is huge. A lot of their books end up in Kindle Unlimited straight off the bat. Every activity they have is basically geared towards the ebook, or a lot of it is geared towards the ebook. And if you're in the traditional model, if you're selling, or moving, let's say 50,000 copies of a title and it's in bookstores, you don't necessarily want it to be in Kindle Unlimited or first reads or any of these other things while it's in the bookstores. Maybe a month or two later, after that initial hype dies down, but not at the get-go, because it's going to hurt your print sales. So you have to really, weigh both of those things and decide which way you want to go.
Yeah.
My business has been primarily ebook the whole time anyway, so it doesn't change the flavor much.
Amazon also did a really cool thing with first reads, that you can now buy like exclusive hardcovers at a lower price with their first reads for their titles, which is it was interesting. And I thought, oh, that's pretty clever. So if you want to, you can read the ebook for free, but then you can also buy, I think it's exclusive. I could be wrong about that, but I know that it's less than it would be after that first month expires. Then the price goes up. So it's an interesting way to also drive those hardcover sales before the paperback is released.
Yeah, nice. Ann also does her marketing collaborative, Tall Poppy Writers, which is for all genres. It's usually about 30 authors at any time. They're out uplifting each other. Have you ever participated in a marketing collaborative with other authors, or would you?
Not as an author, but I am actually part of that Tall Poppy group on Facebook. So I know how that works from the reader and influencer perspective. It's actually quite nice because you do get more interaction with the authors and more opportunities to read books that you would then promote.
I've done a lot of, there's several, I mean, it's mostly been like newsletter swap type stuff, but I mean, there's several little groups I've participated with to do cross promotion and joint marketing efforts and things like that on the thriller side. And it's been beneficial, especially in terms of like building my list, but I kind of dialed it back because we were all thriller writers, we were starting to get identical lists. And so it was starting to become less effective. But if you were part of I don't know how the Poppy thing works, but if, it sounds like it's a cross genre kind of deal, that might actually be pretty beneficial to be a part of something like that. Because even though someone might prefer to read romance or, cozy mysteries or something like that, they might give an interesting thriller novel a try and vice versa. So I'd be willing to do something like that. I'm going to check it out.
I've done it with bookstore talks, pair up with one or two other authors and have a talk, and you do the opening act kind of thing. And that's useful because you end up with audiences from 2 or 3 different people. And a lot of times they don't read each other. Or a real simple way to do it is if you're going to go on a book tour, find out who the local author is that sells well, and then pair up with them for a talk because they'll fill the bookstore for you.
Cool.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
Yeah. I like that idea of that being her author rock band. So I want an author rock band. Yeah. Okay. So it looks like we're out of time. So JD, who is up next week?
Next week, we've got Stella Sands coming on. Stella's a best-selling author of multiple true crime books. Her latest is called Word Hunter. It's about a woman who uses her uncanny ability to analyze words and speech patterns to solve crimes. That should be pretty interesting. Stella Sands.
Yeah, sounds fun. If you'd like to be notified as soon as new episodes publish, make sure you go to writersincpodcast.com and sign up now. We'll see you next episode and have a great week of writing.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Writers Inc. Access the show notes and leave a comment at writersincpodcast.com.